Here we go. Find the equation f of x equals a times x minus h squared plus k for a parabola that passes through the point 812 and has 610 as its vertex. What is the standard form of the equation? Well, when we look at the four choices, each choice gives the vertex form and the standard form. But they only ask you about standard form. So for that reason, I'm not even going to pay attention to the vertex form part. Okay, because they only care about the standard form. So I'm just going to ignore all of the first sentences of each choice. You don't have to. You can, but you don't have to. The way I did it was I started with choice A, and I graphed it in standard form. So I went to y equals, and I typed in 1/2 x squared, which I'm just going to do 0.5 x squared instead to save time. And then I typed in minus 6x plus 28. When I graph it, I see that it is a parabola, and that's because it's a quadratic function. The highest exponent is 2. Okay, but I don't see it, so I go to the table, and look, I'm just looking for the points 812 and 610 for the vertex. 812 is there, 610 is there, and it is the vertex, because see how after it starts going up on both sides? So it's A. Now, I know what they're talking about. This is what they said. They were like, okay, well, if you tell me the vertex is 610, doesn't that mean to get to it you have to go right 6 and up 10? Well, don't we always represent right 6 with an x minus 6 in the x minus h part? Because remember, the x and the minus are just from the formula. Your h is a positive 6, so it just becomes x minus 6. And then up 10 would just be plus the k value, so plus 10. So that lets me know, since this doesn't have an x minus 6, b's out. And then we're looking for plus 10, so c's out. So then at that point, you could just graph A and D and see which one actually contained those 2 points. You know it's going to contain that one because you already checked it. You would need to see which one of them contained that. Correct, because it would become x minus negative 6, which would be x plus 6. But you don't even have to really remember any of the rules about the formula. All you have to do is graph each choice and see which one of them contains that point and that point. Uh, 10 through 12. Number 26, which function is modeled in this table? Any ideas how we could figure out which one of these is correct? Okay, Naya? Okay, so she's saying every time there's an x, she replaced it with an x value of 1. Okay, 1 plus 7 is 8. So far A is working. So now you would need to try the next x value, which is 2. What's 2 plus 7? 9, but we were looking for 11. So that rules out A. Then you would go to B. 1 plus 9 is 10. Well, we need the 1 to make an 8, so B's out. When you do C, 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 5 is 7, but we're looking for an 8. And then D, 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 5 is 8. Then plug in a 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 5 is 11. Also, another way to look at it is, aren't they going up 3, up 3, up 3? So that's the common difference, and it always goes beside the n, or in this case the x. And then isn't the last number always the 0th term? If you were to go backwards to 0, wouldn't that go backwards to 5? And then another way to look at it that I haven't really done so far, but somebody mentioned it in one of my other classes, is just graph them. Like, I'm only going to graph a wrong one and the right one. So I'll graph A and I'll graph D. X plus 7 And I'm going to go straight to the table. Look. Here's the table for that. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Is that the table that we have? No. Now I'm going to graph D, 3x plus 5. Yes, it will be the same calculator. Is that the table we have? 1, 8, 2, 11, 3, 14. So see? Yes. All right, number 27. Which explicit formula describes the pattern in this table? Okay, Naya, what do you think? It's what? D is correct. Okay, how'd you get it? Correct. Let me write this down and then I'll show y'all. Okay, all she did was she went through each choice until she got to the last one. If you replace the C with the first C value, and then equals 3.14 times the D value, which would have been 2, that makes sense. 3.14 times 2 is 6.28. And then it would work every time. If you do 3.14 times 3, you'll get 9.42. 3.14 times 5 is 15.70. All of the other ones would have made a statement that didn't make sense. Like look at A. If you would have plugged in 2 for that D, and then 6.28 for that C, does that make sense? 2 equals that times that? No, that'd be way bigger than 2, wouldn't it? All right, number 28. Somebody besides Naya. I just want to know that somebody else knows what they're doing besides you. Anybody get an answer for 28? C is correct. Okay, what'd y'all do? How do you know? Well, okay. Yeah, she's on the right track. They want you to basically go back and replace it with x. So instead of 12, they now want it to be x, which means this one would be x, and that's 4x minus 20. No. That's all you have to do is go back and write it as f of x. So if you make this x, then you got to make that 12 by the 4 and x as well. All right, number 29. A wild horse runs at a rate of 8 miles an hour for 6 hours. Let y be the distance in miles the horse travels for the given amount of time x in hours. This situation can be modeled by a function. Which of these describes the domain of the function? Josh, what's domain mean? What's domain mean? X. So Josh, only Josh, we can eliminate which choices now? Right, because they both have a y, and they would be for range. Okay, in this particular problem, x has to do with what? No, I want to ask him. Hours. So how many hours can that horse run? Right, 0 to 6, so it's A. Tanasia, if the question had said range, what would the answer have been? What would it be if it were range? It's obviously not A. It's D. Range is Y values, and the horse can run between 0 miles and 48 miles. Because isn't the maximum he can run if he goes for 6 hours at 8 miles an hour is 48 miles? So range would have been D, but they asked for domain, so it's A. All right, number 30. To rent a canoe, the cost is $3 for the oars and the life preserver. So that's a one-time fee just to rent it. Plus $5 an hour for the canoe. Which graph models the cost of renting a canoe? It's C. Remember, you start at the $3. This one starts at 5, this one starts at 0, this one starts at 5. You start at $3, and then from there it increases by 5 an hour. So it's C. The bottom one basically would say that you pay $5 to rent and then you don't pay any more than 5. Yeah, this is in hours and this is cost. Okay, number 31. Juan and Patty decided to see who could read more books in a month. They began to keep track after Patty had already read 5 books that month. This graph shows the number of books Patty read for the next 10 days and the rate at which she will read for the rest of the month. If Juan does not read any books before day 4 and he starts reading at the same rate as Patty for the rest of the month, how many books will he have read by day 12? Anybody get an answer? Nobody? Okay, what would you guess? Okay. Any other guesses? Once Zaire makes it to her seat, I'm going over it. The middle one of 10. Oh, like 17.5? Are you talking about right here, 17? That would be 17.5. Okay, let me explain it. Okay. All right. I am going to go over it. The first thing that you need to figure out is Patty's rate. Well, isn't this graph modeling Patty's rate? Well, so I'll put a point here. And then I wouldn't put a point here because it's going to have a y value of 7.5. And it's just better if we try to stick to whole numbers, right? So I would pick another point right here. So you would rise how many books? 5 books. From 5 books to 10 books is a rise of 5 books over what time period? 4 days. So that is her rate, 5 books every 4 days. Now remember, they said that Juan reads at the same rate, but he doesn't start reading until day 4. So how many books will he have read by day 12? 10. Because how many days is he going to be reading if he starts at day 4 and they want to know on day 12? He's going to be reading for 8 days, right? Well, if their rate is 5 books every 4 days, then in 8 days, wouldn't that mean they'll have 10 books read? So 10. How many will she have read? 20. Because by the 12th day, she would be up to her 15th book, but remember, she had already read 5 before they started keeping track, so 20. All right, number 32 is on the next page. Which expression is equivalent to 121x squared minus 64y squared? I'm going to give you like a 30-second head start to try to figure out what the right answer is. For number 32. D. D. Okay, look, this one's actually pretty easy. This is a perfect square because 11 times 11 makes 121. This is a perfect square because 8 times 8 makes 64, but it's not C because a positive times a positive will not make a negative. A positive times a negative will make a negative, so it's D. And then don't forget about the x's. The x times the x makes the x squared on 121. The y times the y makes the y squared on the 64. All right, number 33. Yeah, 34 is the same thing. What is a common factor for the expression 24x squared plus 16x plus 144? This is tricky. What do you think? It is C. Is that what you had? It is C. Okay, factors are just things that are multiplied together to make it. So normally when we see something like this, the first thing y'all try to do is divide out the A. But if you divide 24 divided by 24, you get 1, but 16 divided by 24 would be a fraction, right? Your GCF, listen, your GCF does not always have to be the A value. It can be something else. Is there another number you can divide out of all? 8. You can't do 12 because... You can't do 12 because 16 over 12 would be a fraction. 8 is the largest number. 8 is the GCF. So now what remains? 24x squared divided by 8 is 3x squared. 16x divided by 8 is 2x. And 144 divided by 8 is 18. So don't you have to multiply 8 times this trinomial to make that? So there you go. C. All right, number 35. For this one, I just want you paying attention. I don't want you writing. Yeah, you can guess. Okay, it says, which of these shows the complete factorization of 6x squared y squared minus 9xy minus 42? The first thing I do normally when I'm looking at a question that I'm not sure like how to do is I look at the answer choices. And I see in 2 of them that they factored out a 3. So I'm like, I wonder if 3 is the GCF. So I try to divide it out of all 3 of them. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and then you'll just bring down the x squared y squared. Negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3, and then you'll just bring down the xy. And negative 42 divided by 3 is negative 14. So since you were able to divide 3 out of all of them, 3 is the GCF, which lets you know that B is wrong and D is wrong. You have to have a 3 on the outside because it's the GCF. Now, I'm going to go ahead and jump to the right answer just to save time, but just watch. You don't have to write this. I just want you watching so that you don't miss any steps. The first thing I would do is I would distribute this 3 to this first binomial. 3 times 2xy is 6xy. 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. Any questions about that? Now I'm going to bring down the other binomial that I haven't done anything with yet, and now I'm going to double distribute. 6xy times 1xy is 6x squared y squared. Now let's break it down. That's because there's a 6 times a 1, which makes the 6. X times x makes the x squared. Y times y makes the y squared. 6xy times 2 is 12xy. Negative 21 times xy is negative 21xy. And negative 21 times 2 is negative 42. So look, we got the 6x squared y squared, and we got the negative 42. And then aren't these 2 like terms because they both have an xy on them? So you can just combine the 12 minus 21, which is negative 9. So you would have had to have done that with A and C, and whichever one of those made the question would have been the right answer, and it was C. All right, number 36. What? No, this is the last page. What are the zeros of the function represented by the quadratic expression 2x squared plus x minus 3? Does anybody remember what the word zeros mean? Okay, when you equal it to 0, but on a graph, what are they? Okay, which are also called the... Let's graph it and then maybe it'll come to your mind. 2x squared plus x minus 3. No. The what? No. The asymptote? No. No. Shh. Let me graph it. 2x squared plus x minus 3. No. Watch the graph and then tell me what the zeros are.
Oh, the y where they hit the y. The x-axis.
The x-intercepts. Okay, look. Isn't this one between, focus, isn't this one between a -1 and a -2? I'd guess around -1.5. And isn't this one at +1? So -1.5 and +1 is where it hit the x-axis. And that's, look, x equals. You were looking for where it hit x. Well, we know it's +1, which rules out C and D. Is -1.5 this -3/2 or the -2/3? Look, guys.
Oh, 1.5, 3/2.
Right. Type it in. 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. 2 divided by 3 is 0.67. So the 3/2 makes that 1.5, so it's A. All right, number 37. What is the vertex of the graph of f of x equals x squared plus 10x minus 9? How can you quickly find the vertex? Graph it and go to the table. So x squared plus 10x minus 9. Okay, I can see that part of the parabola is over here in this corner, and then it goes down and comes up. So doesn't that mean the vertex is down here somewhere, which is a negative? So by just knowing that it's negative rules out A and B. So it's got to be -5, -9, or -5, -34. And it's not on the graph, and 9 is, right. So you know when you go to -5, it's got to be at -34. Because look, there's -9 right there at 0. That's the y-intercept. -5's at -34. All right. Which of these is the result of completing the square? Who remembers how to complete the square? Okay, but we're not going to, because most people will not know how. So I'm going to show you how you can still get this answer without completing the square. Graph this one. So go to Y1 quickly. Y'all do this. I know how to graph. Go to Y1, type in this. Yeah, y equals, and then it'll say Y1. Type in x squared plus 8x minus 30. Graph it first. And then in Y2, put in choice A. Okay, so in Y1, put in the question. And then in Y2, put in choice A. Okay, so your Y1 should say x squared plus 8x minus 30. Guys, those of you who are not doing it, you're not just going to wake up the day of the EOC and know how to type stuff in if you've never practiced. Okay, when you type in choice A for the Y2, did they make the exact same parabola? No, which means A is the wrong answer. So now go back to your Y2 and replace it with choice B, which is just x plus 4 squared minus 46. And now graph those and see if they make the same parabola. You could, yeah. But it might get confusing for y'all on the grayscale screen. They do. Like, it's done graphing and I only see that one parabola. So that means they're on top of each other, so B is it. You typed in something wrong then. This is vertex form, this is standard form, but it's for the same exact parabola. Okay, last question, number 39. The expression -x squared plus 70x minus 600 represents a company's profit for selling X items. For which number of items sold is the company's profit equal to 0? So what do you need to do? Well, you can set the equation equal to 0, but what should you do to figure out the answer, though? Guys, can't you just graph it? So go to Y1 and graph it. -x squared plus 70x minus 600. And then once this parabola appears, or even if it doesn't, only part of it does over there in quadrant 4, go to the table and look for where you get a 0. It's going to either happen at 0, 10, 20, or 35. Which of those numbers does it happen? 10. So it's got to be C, 10 and 60. If you went on down to 60 on the table, it would also say 60, 0. Okay, I am now going to pass